Cell phones for the service.
A Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere Adonai. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own. Then you shall stand firm forever. We've come here today, of course, to remember Judith Sharon Ehrenberg Rubin, who at the age of 84 has gone to her eternal home. We come here to celebrate her life because it was quite a vibrant one, but also, of course, to mourn her death and to perform one of the most important commandments in the entire Jewish tradition, which is ultimately to bury her and lay her body to rest, even as her soul heads up into the heavens. We begin our service this morning with the recitation of Psalms, as I just did, and also with just a little bit of poetry. Judy was someone who loved beauty. She loved the beauty on the outside, but she loved the beauty of human beings on the inside as well. And we're going to hold that as we move forward through today and into the future. A poem by Mary Oliver. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light and giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name, is nameless now. Every year, everything I have learned in my lifetime leads back to this: the fires and the black river of loss whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing that your life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go. There are so many people, of course, who are mourning Judy today. But this morning, I want to call out in our congregation those who are living and those who have passed away. Because Judy was the daughter of Phil and Betty, may their memories be for a blessing. She was, of course, Gary's wife for 63 years, the mother of Judd and Jamie, and the mother-in-law to Michelle Lynn and to Eric. She was the grandmother of Daniel and Hannah, and the sister of Jeff and Joan. She was the sister-in-law of Andrew, Bobby, and Tom. These are some of the people who will help carry on her legacy, but they are not alone. They will need you as well to bring her memory forward. We're going to hear from a few people this morning to remember Judy as a mother and as a grandmother. Our first speaker this morning is going to be Jamie.
Thank you. The last time I was here was my daughter's bat mitzvah 11 years ago. Okay. So no matter how much I prepared for my mother's death, and of course we all knew it was coming as her illness worsened earlier in the year, the actual experience of it has been a lot more painful than I imagined. But I also didn't expect how profoundly moving it was to be with her in her final days in peace, surrounded by her family. We all let her know before her last breath that it was okay to let go, that we will all be okay, and that we have each other, and that her memories will fill the gaping hole we all fill with her loss. For anyone fortunate enough to know my mom, I just miss her so much. She was a special person who made a deep impression on everyone she met. I have received condolences from friends, some of whom I have not seen in more than 40 years, with vivid memories of my mother. She was remembered, and these are all quotes, these are not my words, as cool and sophisticated, kind and compassionate, generous and warm, the epitome of elegance and grace. She used to call people doll, which drove me crazy, but now I sometimes find myself starting to do the same thing. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It was not always easy being the daughter of a woman of such high style and sophistication. In my mind, she was the most glamorous person that I knew. But underneath the glamour was a loving, generous, and kind person. I was so proud of her. And unlike so many kids, probably my own, who are embarrassed by their parents, I was always so proud of mine, especially my beautiful mother, who radiated so much warmth and kindness towards other people. She was the mom who my friends loved to hang out with. She was the one mom people confided in. She had a special gift of making friends everywhere she went. She showed compassion to people less fortunate, especially minority groups and children of all race and creed. Even in her final years, it was a common occurrence for people, many complete strangers, to come up to her at restaurants, the music festival in Aspen, and other public places, and give her a hug just because her radiant smile made them feel so special. My mother was also my biggest advocate. While I probably didn't appreciate it at the time, and of course I couldn't have thanked her enough, she encouraged me to think big and see the world, appreciate art and music, attend college as far away as I wanted, when most of my friends at the time had no choice but to stay close to home. And looking back, there were really no guardrails on what I wanted to do, where I wanted to live, or who I wanted to marry. For a Jewish mother who raised me to believe that of course I would marry a Jew, all that expectation went out the door when she met Eric. She was a super cool lady and loving mother and grandmother, and of course she loved her grand dogs. In her final years, as she began to experience mental and then later physical decline, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with her in Aspen, and it was such a gift. I will remember fondly sitting next to her at the last concert of the season at the Aspen Music Festival while she held my hand, listening to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, one of her favorite pieces. I don't think I could have choreographed a more fitting end to a long and beautiful life. We will love you, Mom, and your memory will be a blessing to all. Amen.
So thank you guys for coming, and family and friends and people that are dialing in. It's been really, really very, very hard, but we feel your support and when we love you. I'm so proud that I will always be Judy Rubin's son. She was awesome and interesting, and she got a kick out of me, and she was absolutely in love with my wife. And as Jamie said, Mom was fearless. She was afraid of no one. And when you hear that phrase, you know, dance like no one's watching, it's to help people be their authentic self. Well, my mom didn't need any encouragement. She was completely comfortable with who she was. She never conformed to expectations of others, even ours. She dressed how she wanted. She had a wicked style. And she was challenging and stubborn. And my mom was smart and she was drop dead gorgeous. She'd say hi to strangers in line at Zabar's in Manhattan, which would make me cringe. She'd engage with every single kid and dog while we were walking on Broadway. That's not what New Yorkers do. And my mom did not care. She thought they were all beautiful. And if that's not what New Yorkers do, that's their problem. Do not pick a fight with her. You will not win. Mom and I, she had one story, and I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, but she would retell the story, and I hated hearing it because she would tell it so often. And then obviously with dementia, then she wouldn't be able to tell it, and I would tell her. But she was driving me to get passport photos, and I was wearing a t-shirt that my dad gave me, and it was a beer t-shirt, and it was AASS, AASS beer. And on the back, it said, grab us. And when I got out of the car to get my photos, she said, there's no way you're getting your photo taken in that t-shirt. And I was like, Mom, it's on the back. Who cares? And she said, well, someday you're going to be, you know, on a business trip and your boss is going to see the passport and I guess it'll all be over. But the point is that like most of our battles, and this one went on for at least 20 minutes in the parking lot, I acquiesced and we rescheduled. So my beautiful mom can rest peacefully knowing that she retired undefeated. I loved our relationship. It evolved even as she declined. But I was so proud of how she dealt with her dementia, because the challenges that she had going on in her head, none of us can really appreciate, but she never retreated. She was always with us, and she was always our family's leading lady. Leaving a hospital about 12 days ago with no chance of getting better, when there's no use of praying or asking for healing, our family worked around the clock to provide comfort. And it was profound and it was cruel, but it was also some of the most incredible moments that we got to experience together. So tomorrow night we begin Shiva, but we've been grieving for 10 days. You know, we had 10 days to hold my mom, to tell her how much we love her, to kiss her and to hold her cute little hands and to tell stories. 10 days to adjust the pain medication so she wouldn't suffer, and 10 days to ask her for forgiveness. In the hospital, my dad said, I'm the luckiest man in the world because I got to spend 63 years with her, and all my fun moments were with this woman. And my dad made a commitment to my mom that never faded. He honored the ketubah he signed on June 25th, 1961, every day through her last breath. And yesterday I found this letter in a jewelry box, and I opened it up and it was a letter you wrote, Mom. And I hope you're okay. I'm just going to share a few things. And it said, as this diamond will last forever, so will my love for you. As this diamond will continue to be brilliant, so will our life together. It may always remain worthy of our continued love. And as this stone will grow in value, so will the meaning of our marriage. Dad, your devotion through the good times and bad is the most beautiful thing I'll ever witness. Michelle, Jamie, Eric, Daniel, and Hannah, we did our best. We tried so hard. And lastly, I'm always going to be indebted to Michelle, my wife of 10 years, for teaching me through action how to treat parents and how to be a better son. And she preached patience and to cherish each moment, to plan special outings for them in New York and Colorado. And that's the greatest gift she's ever given me, because I can close my eyes now. And while I'll miss you forever, I have no regrets, just love.
That was really beautiful. Thanks, Uncle. And I know how much work you've done in the last 2 weeks, just making her as comfortable as possible. And sorry. I know how much work you put in the last 2 weeks making her as comfortable as possible. And it was just really moving to see how much you cared for her and what that took. And I know that her last moments, she wasn't suffering and she was at home in her bed, and that was a really beautiful thing to see. So I just want to say that. So I'm going to speak a little bit on Nani as a Nani, a little bit different than my uncle and my mom, but she was amazing. So as a kid, I would always feel just such a warm and a happy feeling whenever I got the chance to come out to Colorado to see my Nani and Zadie, or whenever they would come to New York and stay at the Phillips Club about 20 blocks away from our house. A lot of that feeling was due to Nani's presence. She was not a typical grandmother, I would say. She was fun, stylish, she was fast moving, she was frenetic. She always wanted to like show me how flexible she was, or take me in during dinner, like take me into another room and she would do ballet moves, or she would show me how far back she could put her arms behind her shoulder. And I always thought, I was like, she's so fun. Like this is awesome. She was quirky. She was funny. She turned like one of the bathrooms into a shrine. And I could no longer take a shower, but I always liked going to that bathroom because like a piece of Nani was left there. When a few more stories of just things that I'll always remember. She loved eating meat off the bone, and she would clean up the bone. Like she would eat a chicken wing down to the bone and suck on the bones, and she really enjoyed that. And I love going to get barbecue with her, getting chicken wings with her, because she was just being herself, and she was being like the quirky Nani that I knew and I loved, and I just thought it was beautiful. And lastly, like to echo my mom, whenever she loved introducing her friends to Nani, I also loved introducing my friends to Nani. And even as her condition worsened, I would bring new people into her life, including my girlfriend Sydney, and she would call her a doll and say, "You're beautiful," and like say, "I love you," like, and just made her feel so comfortable and warm, and made me feel so comfortable. And she just had so much love, and she would show it to my friends, and that just made me feel just so warm inside, and it's something I'll never forget. So I love you, Nani, and yeah, it's hard, but I'll always love you.
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar sentiments, but I think she definitely taught me how to take just immense joy out of very small things. Like I'll always remember one of the last times we went to our favorite restaurant, El Carita. And this was, it got harder for her to leave the house and go out as her physical and mental condition worsened. she was not having the best time at dinner, but she, you know, about halfway through, there was this little girl playing at another table, probably a 3-year-old girl with a pretty dress, and her eyes just lit up, and she just was, you know, became so happy to see this little girl. And it was like, you know, even though she was suffering, she would just, you know, just became so happy. And I always thought it was beautiful how she would just immediately pour out. She would just love people the moment she met them. And she also, similar to Daniel, I introduced like my best friend Luke to her when we drove to their house, and she gave him like a 3-hour art tour of their house, and gave, you know, even though she just was kind of bizarre in the best way, and never apologized for it. And it was always, yeah, she just taught me how to unapologetically be yourself.
I love the image of your grandmother just sort of sucking the marrow out of life, which seems to be how she lived, but also apparently how she ate chicken as well. So it's like going to stay with me. I want to begin with a story of a young man who was about 5 years out of college, whose friend had tried over and over and over again to fix him up with every single eligible Jewish woman in Des Moines. And finally, at a certain point, this young man said, no, I'm done, no more fix up. And his friend said, please, one more person. I promise you, this woman is very special. And Gary said, okay, one more time. And so he describes pulling up in his car in front of the SDT house in the University of Iowa, and Judy walking down the stairs. And he says, and here is this very, very beautiful woman with long blonde hair and big blue eyes, a stunning woman. And Gary said, I looked at her and I said, oh my God, I'm going to marry her. And he said, there weren't too many dates after that. Just 63 years of a love-filled, fun-filled marriage. Judith Sharon Ehrenberg Rubin was born on June 20th, 1940 in Sioux City, Iowa. Her parents, Phil and Betty, were from Eastern Europe and had found their way to Sioux City because they already had family there, and also in a lot of surrounding towns with names that I was assured I would never have heard of, in Iowa, in Nebraska, in North Dakota. She was brought up in a very loving family, and she had cousins everywhere, scattered all over the place. She graduated high school a year early and then went to Stevens College and then to the University of Iowa, where she studied theater. The story goes she actually wanted to study dance, but her parents wouldn't allow it. So I guess that's why she was dancing for her grandchildren all those many years later. But when she and Gary married, they moved to Des Moines, where the family business was. And that's where Judd and Jamie were born and became bar and bat mitzvah in the very same synagogue where Gary became bar mitzvah himself. And they built a life full of activities in the Jewish community, locally and nationally. And they never thought they would live anywhere else. So Judy was whip smart, and Judd spoke to this a little bit. She was a businesswoman, and she was a lay leader, and she sat on the committees of the Friends of Drake Arts and the National Board of the Brandeis University Women's Committee, and I'm sure there are many, many other endeavors that she was involved in. She also had a store that she ran with a friend of hers. But Judd said something I found really interesting. He said, I was a little bit sad that she was born when she was, because I think she could have been a doctor. I think she could have been a healer if she had just been born in a different time. She also, of course, was a real life of the party kind of human who used her charismatic, optimistic powers, not only for fun, but also for good. And there was a lot of fun to be had. Apparently, Gary and Judy, they went to parties, they threw parties. Jamie said, she had more friends than I will ever have. Right? They traveled around the world. Sometimes they would bring Judd and Jamie with them. And as Jamie said, her parents were the most glamorous people in the world in her mind's eyes. And Hannah and Daniel agreed. They actually didn't recognize Judy in the category as grandmother, which is something that Daniel just alluded to. She was in the category of Nani, which was something different entirely. Jamie spoke beautifully, of course, of how proud she was to be Judy Rubin's daughter. She felt like, as you just said a few minutes ago, Jamie, that you had their support to do whatever you wanted in life. And as you also insinuated, that is not typical. And maybe as we try to figure out how we can live on Judy's shoulders in the years to come, that is a teaching that we can take for ourselves. She was a petite woman with a big presence. From the stories that I heard about Judy, and in the few times that I got to meet her over the course of these last years, it felt to me like Judy's compassion was spread very wide. Her love was spread very wide, but not at all thin, right? Like her spirit was big enough that it didn't just hold her grandchildren or her husband or her in-laws or her siblings, right? Or her own children. It spread to whoever she met, whoever she encountered. I heard Gary critique her once, and this is what he said. He said when they were walking down the street in New York City, she not only needed to stop and look at every single baby that she saw, she sometimes wanted to pick them up out of the strollers entirely, which, as Gary pointed out, probably most mothers don't want a stranger to do to their child on the streets of Manhattan, but Judy didn't care. She just wanted to spread the love, not only with her eyes and the twinkle in her eyes, and not only with her words, but actually with her physical actions. She wanted to spread the love to other human beings and also to the animals around her as well. The one familial disagreement we had when we were talking about Judy was whether it was just dogs or all animals that she was in love with. So I'm just going to leave that here for those of you who knew her better than I did. Even when she was in the throes of her dementia over these last years, she was able somehow to connect to people and help them feel seen, to people she had just met, to people who were caring for her in her final years. Judd spoke so beautifully about the way that people were brought to tears by Judy's kindness and open-mindedness. There was a way that she was able to take her love of life and spread it far and wide. Throughout her life, she was driven by this mix of kindness and headstrongness and joie de vivre. I want to tell just another story. This one happened in 1993 when Gary and Judy were visiting the Roaring Fork Valley, as they did from time to time. And Gary had just had knee surgery, so they couldn't be out and about as they typically were. So Judy said to Gary, I have an idea. I called a realtor. Let's just drive around. It'll be fun. And Gary said, why are we wasting this woman's time? We're never going to live here. We live there. And she said, no, this is what we're going to do. And as Gary said, he said, here's a little bit of advice about how to have 63 good years of marriage. Yes. Just say yes to your wife. So in that moment, like he just said yes. So they got in the car with this realtor and she drove them around Aspen and Snowmass and to this foreign place called Down Valley, which they had never heard of. And they looked at a few houses and there were a few that piqued their interest, but still they were not moving here. And then they got back to the airport on their way home, and there was a magazine. You know, many of you, the Yiddish word bashert, right? It was faded. There was a magazine, and on the cover of the magazine was the very house that Gary and Judy ended up buying and living in these last 35 years. And that's how they ended up here. It was a lark. It was Judy trying to have a little bit of fun. And it was also Judy knowing exactly what she was doing. These last few years, as Judy's dementia worsened, Gary and Judy, of course, stayed a little bit closer to home. Instead of going to the music festival every single day, they would only go a couple of times a week. And among the loving things that Gary said about his bride of 63 years was that in the last few years, the concerts were even more beautiful. As I would sit and hold Judy's hand, I felt them even more intensely. When we were all in the hospital together about 12 days ago, one of us, it was either me or Judd or it was Jamie, said something to Gary about how difficult this time must be for him. And he said, with total equanimity, he said, we were together for 60 good years, and we're together for these 3 more complicated ones as well. And then we all cried a little, because that's what it means to be in a family. That's what it means to be in a marriage filled with love, as theirs was. May the memory of Judy Rubin be for a blessing. May her spirit live on through all of us, through acts of kindness, especially to the vulnerable, to seeing the people who are sometimes unseen. May her memory continue through the parties that we throw and the parties that we attend and the friends that we meet, whether thousands of miles away or in a new home here in the Roaring Fork Valley. And while I do think that we probably shouldn't pick up random babies that we encounter on the street, may we remember that to Judy, every baby was beautiful, even the ugly ones, because Judy saw people not just how they were on the outside, but also how they were on the inside. I think we humans need a lot more of that in this world. May we continue to see beauty like Judy did, beauty in humanity, in nature, in music. May this be her legacy, and let us say, Amen. I'm going to ask you to please rise as we say the blessing for those who have died, for those who have passed on. And as we ask God to hold their souls through this journey to the world to come. El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utehorim Kezor Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Yehudit Bat Faivel Veberi, Shehalcha Le'olama Began Eden Tehei Menuchata. Ana Ba'al Harachamim, Hastireha Baseter Knafecha Le'olamim, Utzor B'tzor HaChayim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar, and we say, Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the soul of Yehudit Bat Faivel Vebedi, to the soul of Judy Rubin, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. We're going to move now to the cemetery because in the Jewish tradition, one of the things we try to do as quickly as possible is to bury the person who has passed away so that their soul can start this next stage of the journey.
So, gentlemen, everyone is invited, of course, to interment. However, since we're not traveling in an escorted procession, we have to follow and obey all traffic laws. So just as we will, we'll need to remind you to do the same. I'll ask you to remain in your places as we escort the family and the casket out to the cars. And then if you'd like to join us, we'll ask you to return to your cars as quickly as possible so not to delay this process. At this time, if I can invite the pallbearers forward. Just confirm, say that you
Nice jacket. Taylor finally, when we moved down, further down, he finally said, "What are my saving suits?" He said, "I probably couldn't even get into it."
This is what it's for.
How's your wife, Mary?
Good.
Good. Anyway, hey, sweetie. Okay. No, nothing new. Here. Oh, I don't know where it is.
Getting out to the car.
Yeah.
I'm okay. No, I'm okay.
Um,
You don't bother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all Syracusans.
Oh,
My two of our friends are coming Monday. Their son lives outside of Boulder.
Oh,
They've never been up here. So these are all college, a ZBT and an AE5.
and that's what we are.
I know.
CBT.
So we're waiting. All right, Vivian, I'll speak to you. All right. He's good. They went to the bike races today in Denver. So they left already. Yeah, he took them out of school. Elise is here.
Elise and Paul here.
All right. I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna.
All right, regards to her. I mean, I knew her, didn't know her that well. But she was so.
Okay, 4:45.
A 4:45.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Well, yeah, because then I'll stop for gas, so we'll get there around 5:15. Program is around 5:15.
Now, are you bringing chairs?
Cheers.
So well, I think I have to remember. Mr. Harold, you put chairs like this. Not I follow, you know what I'm saying?
We'll see.